For 20 years, our leaders have made two mistakes: underestimating the Russian threat and overestimating American reliability. Today, we find ourselves caught between two brutes, Vladimir Putin, who declared war on Ukraine and Europe, and Donald Trump, who couldn't care less about Europe, our interests or our values. In this brutal world, we can only count on ourselves.
Your assumption is quite wrong that it would be in Russia's interest to completely dominate and control Ukraine in its entirety, because then they would not have gone into the invasion with such a small army. Russia's goal is not Ukraine's NATO membership, but rather a return to Ukraine's neutral status as it was before 2014. That was and would be the best for this country, and that is why we should support it.
In this historic turning point, as everything seems unstable around us, let's ask a simple question. Can we trust Donald Trump and J.D. Vance to defend our nations against Putin? No. The answer is obvious, and it implies sweeping changes in Europe.
Delegating one's security to a foreign capital is in itself folly. Delegating one's security to a foreign capital that cares so little for your interests is suicide.
Freedom, dear colleagues, rests upon the mastery of one's own destiny. And if Europe wishes to remain free, it must regain control of its own security. We are today so dependent on the United States for assistance to the Ukrainian resistance, as well as for our very own security, that we live under the permanent blackmail of Donald Trump.
We kiss his hand, we tolerate his insults, we foolishly smile at his attacks, hoping our flattery will prevent him from sacrificing Ukraine, and us along with it. Let's take stock of what our security services are telling us.
Let's listen to Bruno Kahl, the head of German intelligence, as he warns the Bundestag about the risks of an invasion of an EU and NATO member country before 2029. Let's hear the French Chief of Staff, General Mandots, as he alerts us to the necessity of preparing for a direct military confrontation with Russia.
Confronted with this existential threat, what are we going to do? Bury our heads in the sand, hoping that it will just pass? Or are we simply going to organize peace demonstrations?
Embrace the tyrant's cause so we don't have to suffer his wrath. No, we will strengthen ourselves and prepare.
We want peace. We do not want war.
But to avoid it precisely, we must deter the enemy from initiating it. We must prepare ourselves morally, strategically, and materially to show everyone, and especially Putin, that Europe no longer rhymes with impotence or democracy with weakness.
Bonjour collègues, pour le moment, nous devons admettre que nous n'avons aucune pertinence. Just consider what has transpired in these past few days. Putin and Trump were seated around the table, and Europe, regrettably, was nowhere to be found. We had no unified or common reaction prepared. The new European defense industry program represents that absolutely crucial investment in a strong European defense backbone, developed in close cooperation with Ukraine, which we desperately need.
Speaker on behalf of the committee.
For 20 years, our leaders have made two mistakes: underestimating the Russian threat and overestimating American reliability. Today, we find ourselves caught between two brutes, Vladimir Putin, who declared war on Ukraine and Europe, and Donald Trump, who couldn't care less about Europe, our interests or our values. In this brutal world, we can only count on ourselves.
The Council of Ministers has proposed to take a more common, more European approach to defence. And the administration of the United States, unfortunately, is increasingly giving the impression that they are, at least mentally, moving beyond the frameworks of NATO, so the need is even more urgent. The EU's most comprehensive defence industry programme, on which we will vote today, marks an important first step in this direction. It will provide powerful tools to strengthen our defence industry, establish a framework for deeper cooperation among EU member states for developing and maintaining joint capabilities, improve our security of supply and strategic autonomy.
The left is Özlem Demirel.
Thanks a lot. The EU's only active political industry is focused on rearmament, rearmament, rearmament. Egypt represents the ultimate step towards a war economy. A war economy means that all areas of public life and production are subordinated to the needs and requirements of war. This program is a dangerous turning point, a historic shift at the expense of social standards, environmental standards, and labor protection. Economically, this is a strange approach. Investments in armament are dead capital. In the arms industry, production can only be endless as long as there's a corresponding need in wartime, or it is artificially created. And in wars themselves, in rare instances, even the children of the elite can die. Instead of satisfying social needs, resources are diverted. Not only that, with the crisis mechanism, the working time directive can be explicitly suspended.
The idea that European public funds are used to finance American military equipment. I'm telling you, if you buy American, you will always remain under American control. It is truly as simple as that, because every single piece of American defense equipment, every American component, remains subject to American law. Merci to Bizek. Washington can block a delivery, prohibit an update, and even oppose the operational use of the equipment. In other words, you are buying hardware that does not belong to you. A nation's defense is its survival, and survival isn't negotiated by bureaucrats with a qualified majority. It's not for the Commission to dictate our military capabilities, nor is it for Mrs. van der Leyen to send our sons to the battlefield.
Thank you for the floor, Madam President. The draft legislation pushes for military support to Ukraine historically instead of exclusively dedicating resources to strengthening the European defense industry. Here and now, we can witness the full reality of the war psychosis that has taken hold of Brussels. Von der Leyen and her supporters want to send European citizens money to a country where it will end up in the pockets of a war mafia. This is already widely known and completely unacceptable. We will not allow the money of the Hungarian people to be flushed down Ukrainian golden toilets. Finally, the proposal simply mentions peace. To say, Ata somebody type of body.
It is entirely appropriate that European nations wish to have full control over the technological and industrial basis of their own defense capabilities. However, it is completely wrong to include Ukraine in this endeavor as an equal or even a privileged partner. The country is in a war. It risks losing and is paralyzed by notorious corruption. Promoting the Ukrainian arms industry? Absolutely not. Your assumption is quite wrong that it would be in Russia's interest to completely dominate and control Ukraine in its entirety, because then they would not have gone into the invasion with such a small army. Russia's goal is not Ukraine's NATO membership, but rather a return to Ukraine's neutral status as it was before 2014. That was and would be the best for this country, and that is why we should support it.